region in particular. Molly, you have the floor.
Okay, and it is on. Well, thank you very much. And a quick thank you for just allowing us to participate. What a great forum to have not only the private sector, but the public sector, because this is very important. It's very important for the migrants and for the communities that we all serve in. And then secondly, for allowing me to be here with my disruptors. I think it's great. I've gotten to know my colleagues, some just from last night, some from several meetings ago, but it is really important that we continue to work together to drive the industry, to drive down cost, and to really deliver for the customers what they want and when they need it. So with that, I'm glad I get to talk to the current trends and emerging trends, because it is really exciting. As you know, Western Union is over 165 years old, and we're constantly transforming. I myself have been at Western Union for 23 years, and in those years, I've seen regions like the Asia region going from majority receive market to now majority send market, and that's really exciting. And when I think about the trends, there are three things I really want to point out that I think are important. First, globalization. Globalization is not going to change. As long as goods and services and capital continue to move across borders, so will people in search for jobs and better lives and for providing back home. So globalization trend is not going to continue. I mean, it's going to continue. It's not going to end, even as technologies come into play. So it's really important that as we think about globalization, we think about how we use innovation to really help our consumers and help bridge the gap. And that's what I feel like we do at Western Union. For the last 10 years, over 10 years, we've been delivering online and now mobile, now to mobile wallets, now delivering into bank accounts. But cash is not going to go away. And it's very important that we continue to prove upon the ways that people can send and receive cash, but also help build that bridge. Because look at, we all have smartphones now, we all are interconnected internationally. So it's really important that we help bring people along as technology advances. So I feel like Western Union plays a very key role in that, in helping introduce and make these technologies real to our consumers and help them in their everyday lives. When I think about the building bridges and you think about Asia, one of the things that really sets Asia apart from the rest of the world right now is innovation. I just read a recent stat that there are more fintech startups in the payments industry in Asia than any other region. And I think that's phenomenal. And then when I think about the innovation piece, which was my second, the third really becomes about collaboration and partnership. Because a lot of times it's not going to be Western Union alone, it's not going to be Instarem alone, or the other partners. It's going to be a collaboration, but not only amongst ourselves, but amongst the public policymakers as well. And if I think about where we're doing things really well in the emerging trends, it is that collaboration at the public level. And I think about the sandbox here in Malaysia, which Catherine's been a part of, which is phenomenal. And I think about, I live in Singapore, MAS has been very, very advanced there in what they're doing to push fintech. And then I think about the public side and what Austrac's been doing with the FinTel alliances. All these things are really needed to help drive the industry, not only to drive down costs, but to really continue that innovation that's going to be really important, because at the end of the day, we're all here because of those consumers who are moving cross borders for a better life, but more importantly, to send money back home for their loved ones. And we're here to facilitate that, and we've got to constantly be looking out for improving customer experience and, most importantly, driving down cost.
Thank you very much for these very interesting insights. And now perhaps I would turn to the boys team and Yogesh. If I'm not mistaken, when you joined MoneyGram, one of the objectives of the company was to grow its self-service channels. And so I will ask you if, in your opinion, these have indeed become main drivers of the growth of your company, and in general, perhaps, essentially, which have been the main drivers of the growth and changes in the remittance landscapes thus far?
Yeah, thanks for this. And Yeah, thank you to everybody for inviting us before I could answer the question. And it's a great forum, again, adding to what Molly said, regulators, academics, as well as, a lot of our partners are here, so thank you to them. More importantly, I think, thank you for braving the cold. It is a very cold room, so thank you for that. Just coming back to the key question here, MoneyGram looks at itself in the last few years. We've reinvented ourselves. We look at ourselves as more a 70-year-old startup, okay, which is oxymoron, but it's interesting. We've got the IP, we've got expertise, we've learned a lot over the years, but we're trying to be nimble, we're trying to be agile, we're trying to kind of think like a lot of our partners are, our competitors here, who are kind of innovating and moving ahead. And the key driver for that, and I joined from a background of digital payments. I was at PayPal before this, and the key driver for us as we moving forward is that our consumers are changing, their journeys are changing, and while we're still a large cash-to-cash market, but the changes are rapid, and it's not only about digital being a part of the payment kind of journey, but also being a part of the decision-making journey, which is basically digital's ahead. People are looking at various options, and at times they will choose what's easiest for them to do, and what they believe in and trust. So if they trust, if they trust the neighborhood pawn shop and they can go and pick up their money there, they will go and do that. So it's a customer who's changing, and that's driving a lot of the changes that we're doing. So at MoneyGram, therefore, our focus has been how can we be ahead of the change and try and do stuff before we get completely disrupted. And someone comes and asks, what is your Kodak moment, right? So for us, it is very, very essential to talk about what can we do to be in the part of customer's journey. So we did a Facebook send bot. We're talking about commercializing it across the board. We have our strategic partnership with Ant Financial, and we're looking at a slew of wallets that are coming in. We have a few partners, few of them in the room that we are making announcements with soon. So the idea is to kind of make it easier for the customer to complete that journey. It is essential for the customers, and all of this will kind of lead to reduction of cost. Because right now we are in a phase where we want to have more regulation, we want to know more and more KYC, AML, we want to kind of do a lot of stuff to ensure that the transaction is safe, even if it's small value, but at the same time we want to reduce costs. So something has to give. It's not possible to have everything in place, but at the same time, regulators such as the Malaysian regulator, the Singapore regulator, have been ahead. The non-face-to-face KYC that the Malaysian regulator is driving, it's going to drive down cost. I mean, meeting people physically in shops, it costs money. It's not going to be easy. Right now, some of our digital channels are even more expensive than our cash-to-cash channels. And that's a shame. We need to kind of figure out a way to make that more efficient and pass on the benefits to the customer. So that's kind of my thought process around it. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. Now I'm turning to Catherine. WorldRemit is a fairly recent company, but has gained quite some market share since its beginning. And in your experience, I would like to ask you, after this 4 or 5 years or so, what are the main obstacles in terms of regulations in the countries you are operating in, which have been addressed or that you are still facing today? And how can regulators be more accommodative and supportive to facilitate further developments in the market?
Sorry about that. If I may, I'd just like to add a bit more from to panelists. If I could maybe ask a question from the audience, and rather than say who has a mobile or a smartphone, maybe ask who has not got a mobile or smartphone. Can I see? Yes, there's no hand coming up. And I think that's really a point about trends, is this. These things has changed the world. As far as I'm concerned, this is a revolution. You know, I've seen it in Africa, I've seen it in other places, and I think this is what's going to change remittances, and certainly is showing. You know, yes, cash to cash is still prevalent. Over 90% of the remittances are still in cash, but that's going to change very quickly. You know, most people now have got a mobile or a smartphone, both on the send and also on the receive side. You know, mobile, more than 1 billion people who don't have a bank account have got a mobile. The GSMS stats shows that there's 690 million mobile accounts in the world, and there's 25% increase from 2017 from 2016 to 17. And in fact, the Asia Pacific region is the one showing the highest growth. I was talking to people from the Bank Negara yesterday about Malaysia, and you know, even people who don't have migrants here, who don't have bank account, they will have a smartphone. So I think this is really a change, and that's going to come and change the way remittances are done. And that's very much what WorldRemit was about. When we set up 7 years ago, it was about changing the way people were sending money, seeing that technology can help people to make, you know, remittance easier, safer, but also come cheaper because you can use technology. So that's certainly that's been our approach. In terms of looking at regulation, yes, regulation, and I think that's probably one of the challenges that for any newcomers in the industry is that you have to enter a market which is quite difficult. You know, around the world, there's no consistency in terms of, getting licenses. You know, just to give you an example, you know, in Europe, you can get one license for 28 countries. In the States, you've got to have one per state, and you know, you wouldn't think that that's one country. Obviously, as an online players, we were not able to start in some countries like, for example, Singapore and Malaysia until recently, because eKYC was not allowed, and we are very grateful to have been able to participate in the sandbox with the Bank Negara in Malaysia to kind of help them to kind of see what eKYC was about in terms of remittance, and then certainly helping both sides to understand and how to work that. But it is a challenge, and it's not just a challenge just about getting the licenses, but about operating. You know, we operate in the cloud, for example. That's also a challenge for still some jurisdiction to accept, you know, that the cloud is the way forward. It's about, sending to mobile money. Again, the regulations are very inconsistent, especially in Africa and in other countries. Some are allowed to operate as e-money senders and therefore receive international remittance. Some are not. You know, we have problem in West Africa. So the regulations are still a challenge and probably preventing in some ways some of the competitors to come, newcomers to come in the market, and obviously helping competition, and competition helps to reduce cost.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Indeed, there are still some challenges on the regulatory front. We keep hearing in various fora about the consistency still between regulations globally, even though I guess that in the last 5 years, more and more countries are allowing money transfer operators to provide services directly. A lot has changed as well from that perspective. So I guess it is improving. Perhaps there are new challenges, but on the AML-CFT front in particular, and we will discuss that as well in the context of de-risking panel in this forum. I wanted also to continue this discussion on exactly what the changes in regulations and technology have brought in terms of more players in the market. So now I turn to Prajit. And it seems that your adventure started due to frustration and a genuine desire to offer convenience and better services to users, which I guess is also has become one of the objectives of the whole industry, to focus on convenience. So in the meantime, since you started, the market has indeed evolved a lot, and there are now much more players than when you founded your company. Do you think that with the high number of players in the market now, and increasing number of fintech startups also looking to have a piece of the Asian remittance market, it will soon become saturated, or is there still room for new players? What is your opinion on that? What are the key strategies perhaps to stay relevant in the market or to survive?
Thanks, great question. So I'll take just 30 seconds to introduce Instarem, because we're possibly the youngest company, so we're just 3 years old. So we are Southeast Asia's possibly largest digital cross-border payments company based on licensing. We're present from now Australia to the US. Our focus is account to account, and very proud to say we are price champions. We have actually led reduction of price in multiple markets. And this is account to account, so you see 6%, 7%, 2%, we don't know any of that things. We are 0.6% in a market like Malaysia, 0.25% in a market like Singapore. So extremely price competitive, and help other competitors actually get their prices down, very prevalent in some of the markets where we are today. So that's a bit about us. I think great question around competition. I think competition is great. If you really look at digital account to account side, we don't compete with each other. We are actually competing with banks, and banks are making an arm and a leg out of every transaction today. Right? Incredible on FX spread, incredible on transaction fee, no clarity when the payment's going to reach. So we are actually creating a new category. So we are actually pulling people out who have been using banks for decades to actually start using and trusting us. And a great question around trust. So competition is really good. Funny part about competition is whenever we get a license in a new market, first person I call up is some of the guys who we work with, which are other digital money remitters firms, and say that, hey guys, why don't you start in this market also? We got this license, this is the bank we work with, blah, blah, blah. The reason I do it is very selfishly, because they come with a $4 million budget, and I come with a $40,000 budget. So they'll go spend millions of dollars on marketing, and I can actually lean off that to kind of grow our business scale into specific categories, right? So these are important things to grow. Is the market going to get saturated? The answer is no, because largely the category we're creating, a lot of payments are now moving into real time. Customers, especially on the retail digital account to account side, want payments to happen as fast as possible. I would say that's a normal trend, but we did a payment from Australia to India, account to account, in 13 seconds. Right? So that's what the market's going to go to, and people are really going to go after that in terms of how fast the payment goes. Because convenience, I think we have created an internet economy of convenience, right? All of us can do a payment within 4 clicks. That's as simple as that. We can take the money out of your account, have the money deposited in the account. Now, speed is going to be the critical aspect. We've made price transparent. We've made processes convenient. So speed is going to be an extremely critical, a big differentiator for us going into the next few years. Coming to an interesting category, instead of competing and fighting with us, what Instarem has seen is banks now want to work with us. So instead of really fighting with us and saying that, hey, we want a part of market share, we see banks wanting to latch onto our rails, which have now been built, and using our pipes now to deliver a real-time payment. So I think that's a great insight. And the market is becoming more and more exciting in terms of competition. So DBS Bank, which is one of the largest banks in the region, they actually launched in Singapore a platform for remittance for non-bank customers. So that would probably be one of the first in this region specifically, that a bank is actually now moving out of their comfort zone, which is a bank customer to non-bank customer. So there's no saturation going to happen. Southeast Asia is going to be the most exciting remittance market in the next few months.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to let's say, suggest a question for perhaps all the panelists, because I'm sure all of you have very specific insights on these questions and on this question, and it would be related to which areas in the Asia-Pacific region the Asia-Pacific region, is leading or lagging behind as compared to other regions. We know, for instance, that the costs in certain corridors in particular is still very high. We have learned a bit about the regulations in the region in the Remit Scope presentation. And we've spoken a bit also about innovation in the region and competition. So I would give the floor to any of you that would like to elaborate a little bit on this topic. Who wants to start? Yogesh?
Yeah, thanks. So I think what we've seen, and you know, just to Catherine's point, I think everybody has a mobile phone. There's a lot of mobile-related transactions that are happening. What we're seeing in APAC as it's kind of becoming more and more a send market, used to be a large receive market, but now it's becoming more and more a send market. The one thing that we notice is that on the send side, it's leading, at least for MoneyGram, in terms of you know, percentage of transactions that happen through digital channels, and they, you know, are becoming pretty significant. I mean, we'll soon cross probably half of our transactions on the send side would be digital, and that's something that we are heading towards in this part of the world. But of course, you know, that's not reflected all across the globe. In some parts of the world, this transactions is still a lot cash to cash and account to account. So we do see that trend accelerating in APAC, and it's something that's happened over the last 2, 3, 4 years, and we can see that kind of going further and people moving away into these kind of remittances. So wallets, I think if you look at trends in countries like India, you know, WhatsApp has launched a payment tool, and it's, WeChat always had one, but you know, they've not done something cross-border, recently talking about doing it. So there's a lot that the traditional fintech kind of disruptors are looking at in terms of driving stuff, and a lot of those experiments, you know, are all about APAC, and that's where I think the lead is. So I strongly believe that we will drive it. At times, you know, being an American company, we have to actually educate people on how fast this is moving. So it's not simple at all. So I think, but in the spirit of being an entrepreneurial company, we're driving and pushing the envelope, and we are learning from competitors and partners such as the ones on the panel. Thanks.
If I can just add something. I think, you know, going back to mobile money, because obviously that's something I'm very close to. I think that there's also a change in, you know, for as far as Asia Pacific, you know, there's going to be a big change in terms of the flow, because, you know, I understand the World Bank statistics that in Asia, by 2030, over 60% of the population will be over 65, and therefore that means there's going to be a lot of migration coming to this region. But also the migration also involved in a lot of continents. If we look in Africa, it's by young people, and I think, you know, they are the tech people. They call it the one who can't have a mobile and expect things to be immediate and using a mobile. So I think that's also another driver to this, I think, the scaling up of mobile money. Also, I think, you know, we have from Remittances and also the keynote speak about, you know, the $200. I would challenge that, because I think this is changing. We certainly see that in our business. When you send to mobile money, we found that the pattern has changed. People are sending smaller amount to more people, and certainly, you know, for a subject which is dear to my heart about financial inclusion of women, there's still a lot of research to be done, but there's certainly, we can see that there's some evidence, and certainly we talked to a lot of our customers and anecdotal experience of talking to our customers, that, you know, women benefit from that because they sometimes receive for the first time money themselves rather than being sent to maybe the head of family, and be able to have on the mobile, be able to be financially included for the first time.
I'd just like to add to that, especially the financial inclusion piece. If we don't concern ourselves with the ecosystem around these payments as well, it's great that we're innovative and disrupting and driving. We're ahead with mobile wallets. We're all talking about having money transfers, remittances on social media, WeChat, Viber, Facebook, all those things. But if there's nowhere for them to use that money, if it lands on a wallet, but that wallet has no other use case, it's not going to go anywhere. So it's really important that the entire ecosystem be well evolved to really make this where it's going to really make a change for financial inclusion. So I think those are the things that I'd like to see it really advance is let's get to where you can actually use that money for something like they've done with M-Pesa in Africa. And that's when we're really going to be able to touch millions and millions of people.
I want to address a small elephant in the room, which is regulatory, right? Especially in this region. I think if you really look at it, this region has over a period of time struggled to be in par with what's happening in Europe, especially on open banking or on those aspects kind of things, right? So if you really look at this region, we've got BNM who's made excellent progress on eKYC, right, which is a very critical aspect. MAS has gone for eKYC. HKMA actually made a fantastic rule last year where they got rid of us requiring an address proof, especially if you're going to cater to a migrant who is a construction worker or a helper. She doesn't have an address proof.